the underground movement in Europe and especially France. These women, many of them from wealthy families, found it hard to leave the countries they had come to love. Those who stayed on the continent fought anybody they could. Already under suspicion because of their nationality, they hid down pilots of the British and the American forces and acted as couriers to help the Jews escape. One of these was Nancy Wake. She was an Australian living in France. She was the wife of a millionaire who joined the resistance. She parachuted into France with over $1 million to finance local operations. Her fearlessness gained the respect, and she was known as the Chief of the Parachute. She organized the supply of arms and equipment from London to the Maquis groups of over 7,000 men in central France. She also led a bazooka attack against a machine gun nest, and she also participated in an attack on Gestapo headquarters. They drove right up to the front door with 14 Maquisards. They covered her while she ran up the stairs. She opened the door, tossed in grenades, killing 38 Nazis in one raid. A British woman that also participated was Pearl Witherington. She was English, who also spoke French, who worked for the SOE. She parachuted into central France to serve with local Maquis and act as a courier. When her leader was captured, she took over half of his territory. Her Maquis, over 3,500 men, killed over 1,000 Germans in a 4-month period. There was also an Irish woman, known as the Contessa, who was Irish by birth. She remained in Italy during World War II. She lived in a small town near Milan and was the leader of a very effective resistance group. Her major contribution came to the near the end of the German occupation of Italy. She was the mastermind behind a successful plot to free Allied soldiers from a Nazi POW camp in Italy. Both the Nazis and the townspeople thought she was a loyal fascist. This gave her an opportunity to gather sensitive information. Such as information put her into the position of knowing ahead of time that the Allied soldiers were being moved from the camps inside the German borders. Her plan was to dress resistance fighters as high-level Gestapo officers. They entered the camp, loaded up the prisoners, and the escape was successful. In France, as well as in the other European nations, the women shared the same danger as the men. Many of them were sent to Ravensbrück prison. Others were killed or tortured. The women in France played many roles in the resistance, such as organizers. André de Jong, known as Didi, formed the Comet Line. She helped 356 pilots, 280 of them were Allied aviators. The escape line started in Belgium and went throughout France to Spain. They set a record. Over 776 were saved. Didi herself made 20 trips to Spain. She was eventually caught by the Gestapo, and she admitted to being the leader, but she was not believed by the Germans, who underestimated her because of her sex. Didi endured 17 interrogations without revealing the names of others. She was sent to Ravensbrück prison until the liberation. Another organizer was Marie Madeleine Fourcade. She directed a French intelligence network known as the Alliance. Under her leadership, placed nearly 3,000 agents in most French cities and ports, providing British with information regarding German defenses prior to the D-Day invasion at Normandy. The organizers were responsible for many things. They coordinated supply from the British to the French. In this time, they were able to coordinate 650 tons of deliveries of explosives, 500,000 small arms, and they were supplied by parachute canister over France. Another partisan leader was Ada Gobetti. She was a mother and a school teacher who formed resistance activities in Turin, Italy. She hiked through the Swiss Alps, bringing in information from the Allies, published a clandestine newspaper, organized radio transmissions, and transported people through the underground. After the war, she became the deputy mayor of Turin. Women also worked as guides. They worked to lead Allied soldiers and airmen to safety. and they helped over 5,000 American and British at a very high cost. The British and the American pilots cost a lot of money to train, over $15,000 for a fighter pilot and over $23,000 for a bomber crew. Women guilty of helping Americans were sent to concentration camps or killed. A high percentage of Allied planes were shot down over Europe, and women were very effective in the role of guides. They were good because they were less likely than men to being stopped by military or police. It was also necessary for them to be daring, intelligent, quick-witted, with nerves of steel to endure police checks at transport stations. They could appear with flyers as girlfriends or wives and were not suspicious. Many of the guides accompanied the invaders for a leg or for the length of the journey. In many ways, they were able to use their female charms to mislead the occupiers. For security reasons, the guides only know their first names or use false identities. One such guide was Peggy Van Leer, who worked for Dee Dee's Comet Line. She successfully fooled the Germans into believing she hadn't been in the resistance during a German roundup. She was responsible for helping invaders from the German captors. She also led airmen over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain. She led a double life. Her family and friends didn't know. She didn't want them to worry. Women were also involved in acts of sabotage and combat. They derailed trains, blew up bridges, and cut telephone wires. A small number of women played a significant part. The motto was, "Not one Frenchwoman for the Reich." Many were trained in England. 39 were sent over. They were trained right alongside men in specialized schools. They learned how to handle weapons and explosives, go through parachute commando and security training. One such woman was Marguerite Petitjean. Her expensive clothes were used in her job. Fake shoulders contained plastic explosives, and she used perfume to masquerade the smell. She molded the plastic explosives into the railroad track and fitted a wired time delay fuse so she could derail a train. In one instance, she derailed the train with 21 cars. Women also participated in combat groups. At the end of the war, these women received recognition for the service. In France, a file was begun by the Allies of those who had helped and for their official recognition of services. Medals and awards were presented to many women. Many workers went unrecognized, however. In France, after the war, women were enfranchised with the vote soon after the war, and women were also honored with their pictures on national stamps. During the war, many women took over jobs previously held by men and did them well. In this time, they earned the respect of their men. After emancipation and franchisement, over 100 women were members of municipal councils, and the right to vote was included in the Constitution of the Fourth Republic in 1946. In this way, they gained political power in France and as a group. Men and women of France put aside most of their differences against a common enemy threatening them, the Nazis.